When you started your retail business, it was probably a pretty big risk that you were taking. You were committing your time, your energy, and most importantly, your money. When we first start out, we're pumped full of optimism. Everything that happens, whether it's good or bad, feels exciting, and it can feel like the best time of your life. Jump forward a couple of years when you're juggling the day-to-day running of your retail or e-commerce business, and the word risk can make you run away and hide. Today on the Bringing Business to Retail podcast, I want to let you in on 3 things that you should be doing before you think you're ready. Welcome to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast, where I, Selena Knight, share strategies, interview retail revolutionaries, and delve into the minds of e-commerce experts to help you grow a profitable, independent retail or e-commerce business. If you're stuck in a rut, or if you feel like business is way harder than it should be, or you've overachieved all of the things that you've set out to and are wondering what to do next, or how do I even make this better? I know that you're going to love today's episode. If you're stuck in a rut, feel like business is way harder than it should be, or you've achieved all of the things that you set out to and are wondering what next, or how do I even make this better? Then I know that you're going to love today's episode. Hey there, welcome back to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. If you've been listening for a while, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come and join me once again. And if you're a first-time listener, welcome. Today is going to be fun. I'm going to give you some stories, some strategies, and some tips that you can go and implement in your business. And if you haven't met me before, I'm Selena Knight, the retail strategist, and my superpower is scaling independent retail and e-commerce businesses. So if that's what you want to do, you are in exactly the right place. As I record this episode, I'm coming to you from, I think, week 5 or 6 of lockdown and day 8 of hard lockdown, like can't leave the house lockdown. And it has been really difficult because we are active people. My husband, my daughter, and I walk the dogs twice a day. My husband and I go to the gym 5 times a week. We train with a personal trainer twice a week. We like to be outside. And so whilst we can walk outside our house, we can't leave our property. And it's the middle of winter. So it's not really perfect sitting outside weather. And it has brought home this realization to me that I'm prepared to spend money. I did a Facebook Live yesterday titled, "Don't Tell Me What I Value." And that's exactly what it was about, is as a retailer, you don't get to tell your customers what they value or what they can spend their money on. And I talk about how I spent $88 on getting doughnuts delivered. I know, seems ridiculous, doesn't it? I've also just spent $22 on a same-day delivery of some gym equipment so that we can train with our personal trainer via Zoom. Now, if you don't have those sorts of things in place for your customers, if you don't offer as many solutions to your customers' problems as possible, you're going to be losing out. And that's exactly what happened to me when I tried to buy the gym equipment, is there were no businesses who had same-day delivery, which is ridiculous in this day and age. With the amount of crowdsourcing platforms out there, here in Australia, we have companies like Sherpa and Zoom2You, which is a third-party company that you integrate into your website. The customer pays for the express shipping and they get their products in a couple of hours. Now, in my case, that cost was $22, but I was prepared to pay it. But as retailers, I know with my clients, when I tell them to integrate software like this, they say, well, none of my customers would pay $22 for same-day delivery. But you don't know that. Or we're not in an area where that would work. You're putting your biases onto your customer. Personally, I lead a busy life and it is not worth my time to go to the shops. It literally is cheaper for me to pay someone $22 to go to the shops because the hour that it would take me to do it, I make more than $22 for my business. So when you start to look at your business as a money generator and your time as valuable, you start to realize that people are prepared to pay for what lets them reclaim their time. If a busy mum is trying to get ready for a birthday party on a Friday afternoon, Saturday is fast approaching and they're busy trying to bake a cake and they've just realized that they've run out of Wrapping paper? Will they pay extra to have it delivered same day? Hell yeah. And remember, your business is not about you. It's about serving your customers. So today's episode, I want to share with you, look, I've been doing this for 15 years now. I want to share with you 3 things that you should be doing before you think you're ready. Now, integrating one of those third-party pieces of software that gets your customers the products on the same day isn't one of them, but I think you should do it anyway. So that is a bonus tip. So maybe it's actually 4 things to do before you think you're ready. And the first one is finding some kind of platform that will deliver same day for your customers. And one of the things we're going to talk about today is risk. Now, there is obviously big risks and little risks. If you go and buy a $2 scratch lottery ticket, it's a small risk. Sure, you might win, but as you scratch those numbers off, when you don't win, you feel that momentary sigh of disappointment and you move on. It doesn't haunt you for the rest of your life. But if you're putting in $5,000 towards Facebook ads, you don't know what the outcome is going to be, and you may not get that $5,000 back. So you're taking a bigger risk. Now, implementing third-party software to get your products to your customers same day, no risk. Generally, there isn't a setup fee for this. The company will do it for you. So there is no cost to you. There's no risk for you. If your customers don't use it, it doesn't cost you a thing. So why wouldn't you do it? Now, of course, not every risk is going to have huge consequences on your business. Choosing a new product range, for example, is a small risk that you take on every time you place an order. You never know whether those products are going to sell. It's a calculated risk. Hopefully, when you're making these decisions, you're looking at what has sold in the past, what's currently trending, what are your customers asking for? And when you put all of this together, you make a decision and you either choose a range or you don't. Now, I know from experience, been there, done that, got a box of old t-shirts to prove that sometimes we get it wrong. But if you didn't take that risk every season, then very, very quickly your business would become stale and you would lose your customers. And I'm sure you can think of many other decisions that you make, calculated risks that you take, that occur without a lot of deliberation. But there are bigger risks in business, the ones that do have consequences. But they are ones that you should definitely consider taking, because without them, you are destined to stay small. And honestly, if you're listening to this podcast, that's the antithesis of what you're looking for in your business. You're here because you want to learn the tools and the strategies to scale. So let's jump in and talk about these 3 risks that you should take, even if you don't think you're ready to take them. Now, the first one is probably me preaching to the converted. You have to hire before you think you need to. I can tell you that every single business that I have ever consulted with is understaffed. And I don't just mean that on the shop floor. I know that hiring can feel like such a big step. I mean, what if they don't work out? What can you trust them to do? It's easy to think that it's going to be more effort to train them than it is to just do it yourself. And probably the biggest one is, can I actually afford them? There's this fine line between hiring too early and hiring too late. Too early, and you could end up struggling with cash flow. But waiting until you think you can afford to bring on a new team member is probably hindering your business growth. And I have just been through this firsthand. In the last 3 months, we've put on 3 new team members and gotten rid of 1. In fact, as I record this podcast, I actually have a meeting with another person this afternoon to potentially come on board as well. Does that scare the freaking bejesus out of me? Yes, because not only do I have to pay for these people, I have to make sure that I have my systems and processes in place so that they know what they're doing and they're not wasting their time, which is wasting my money, if I don't have a really clear outline of what I want them to achieve, then frustration happens. I get frustrated they're not getting the results. They get frustrated because they're not 100% sure what they need to do. So this is why a lot of people don't hire, because the buck stops with them. As the business owner and the CEO, it is your job to make sure that your team know what to do, know the outcomes they're supposed to achieve, and have some kind of way to measure the results that they're putting in. And if you haven't put those in place because you've been faffing about uploading products to your website or packing orders or doing that busy work, those busy work tasks that an overworked, underpaid shopkeeper does, then that is all on you, which is, of course, a really scary place to be. So this fear of the unknown is what generally stops us from hiring. So let me give you some pointers on what I've learned from over a decade of hiring people and firing people. The old saying, hire slow, fire fast, 100% true. I am all for it. I have hired and fired probably over 100 people in my business days. And trust me, if you ever get that inkling that the person isn't right, they probably aren't. Now, sometimes you can get the inkling that someone has potential, and that you can take it, you can harness it, and you can help that person grow. But if you are constantly checking somebody's work, if you are constantly having to remind them what needs to be done, showing them the processes again, the fact is they're not the right person for the job. The right person for the job actively tries to improve. They might ask you how to do things, but then they take that information and they put it in place. So there is this fine line again. If they're constantly asking for your approval, probably not the right person. But then if they're not asking any questions and not performing, again, probably not the right person. But this comes back to you. Have you set those clear goals? Have you put a process in place for them to follow? Or have you just hired them and said, here you go, start being my marketing manager. I'm hiring you because you've got the experience. You should tell me what I need to be doing. Guys, that's not how it works. And I did a podcast a couple of months ago, one about what a marketing manager does and one about what an e-commerce manager does and why you need them in your business. So I will link to them in the show notes, and I highly suggest you go back and listen to them, because if you are pure play e-commerce, these are the two people you're probably going to need in your business first. And if you have a physical store, apart from the people who work in the shop, these are the people you need next. So once you have staffed your store, once you've got your shop associates and you've got your shop manager, then you need to look at who's doing your e-com, who's doing your marketing. Now, another tip from someone who's done this way too many times and worked with way too many clients who are paying people who don't perform. Don't keep your staff on just because they're nice. You are 100% okay to go and try and find them some other work with other people. Find out what their superpower is and help them find a job doing that. But if they're not right for you, they're costing your business money. They're not making your money. I really struggle with this concept that too many retailers have, that somebody is better than nobody. Because actually, they're not. 9.5 times out of 10, they're costing you mental energy. They're costing you physical money because they're not bringing in the dollars or they're not giving you the results that they need. But they also bring down team culture when they're not pulling their weight, which, and I've seen this happen, can mean that your good people leave. They don't want to be in an environment that drains the energy out of them. Now, without growing your team, before you think you're ready, there's a pretty good chance you won't actually get to the point where you can afford to hire them. Why? Because you're too busy juggling tasks that you should be delegating. You're working in your business instead of growing it. Freeing up your time as the CEO to work on tasks that generate income, and maybe that is something like marketing, is a much better use of your time than packing orders or serving customers or uploading products to your website or posting on social media or making graphics in Canva. All that ends up happening is either you, or if you have a good team, they end up being stretched so thin they aren't able to do their job well, because more and more jobs are being added to their to-do list. And so you or they end up just ping-ponging around, never actually putting the effort in to get the results that you want. So you need to be hiring, before you think you're ready. Now, risk number 2 is to market on a new channel. Now, I remember when Facebook was very new. I was one of the first businesses out there back in 2008, I think, and hardly anyone used it for advertising. And I remember when Google ads were fast and cheap and effective. Those were the early days of digital marketing when customer acquisition was easy and super affordable because nobody else was using it. Nowadays, whilst Facebook and Google ads are still extremely effective, more and more people are using them. So the customer acquisition costs have gone up exponentially. I know personally where we used to be able to add people to our customer database for $1, we're now looking at $3 to $4 per email address. So 4x in the costs. So again, there's this delicate balance of being where your customers are at and finding channels that actually give you a return on investment. So nowadays that might be TikTok or Pinterest or YouTube or even LinkedIn ads. When you already know how much it costs you to acquire a customer through the channels you're marketing on now, you have a benchmark that you can use to work out how much you should invest in those other channels and the kinds of returns that you should see. So it is a calculated risk. And I'm not just talking about social media here either. I'm also talking about things like marketplaces, Amazon, eBay, Craigslist. Here in Australia, we have the Catch Group. In America, you have Walmart. These marketplaces, whilst you do pay a fee for every sale, you pay a commission that generally runs somewhere between about 12 and 30%. The fact is, you are getting your products in front of people who would never have known that you existed before. So the key is to leveraging those marketplaces, knowing what your customer journey looks like so that once you have paid that acquisition cost, then you can convert that customer to buying from you direct. 30% for a new customer is not a bad cost. So don't get caught up in this idea of I have a 50% profit margin, so I can't give up 30 to somebody else. Understand your numbers. This is something we talk about a lot inside of Scale Your Store. Understand what it costs to acquire your customer. Understand your customer's lifetime value. Because if your customer is the kind of person who comes back every single month and places a $100 order for 5 years, then you can afford to pay $100 to acquire them. And that's the trap that overworked, underpaid shopkeepers fall into. The CEO knows what that customer lifetime value is. They understand what their customer journey is. They know what their customer acquisition cost is. So when they market on a new channel, regardless of whether it is pay-per-click advertising or a new platform, they know what it costs. They know it's a calculated risk. And they know that if it's underperforming, they just stop doing it. And again, this is something we go through inside of Scale Your Store. We map out the customer journey. We look at customer lifetime value. We look at churn risk. We look at customer acquisition cost. So when you make these decisions, you're not making them out of some number that you've pulled out of your head, or you're not making them from a place of fear. Marketing on new platforms and new channels is one of the quickest and easiest ways to scale. So if you haven't been doing this till now, then it's time to add it to your growth plan. Okay, so let's quickly recap. First thing to do before you think you're ready, hire. Second thing to do before you think you're ready, market on a new platform or a new channel. The third thing for you to do before you think you're ready is to stop thinking small. Now, remember when you first opened your business, I'm sure you had lofty goals of hitting $1 million in the first 12 months, that magic million that we so often hear people reference. And there's probably a good chance that that didn't happen. And I'm going to talk about why that may not have happened in a moment. But what I do find is that when you don't hit these big, lofty goals, especially right at the beginning, you scale back your dreams and you focus on little things, stuff that is really easily achievable, but it's stuff that doesn't grow your business. There's something about the magic million that people strive for, but they never actually sit down and work out how they're going to do it. Inside of Scale Your Store, we actually do. We reverse engineer your 7-figure growth plan. That's one of the modules right at the beginning and when you set yourself up for success. So the problem with having something like a 12-month $1 million goal is that you probably are never going to be able to achieve it because you don't have a marketing budget put aside. You don't know things like your customer lifetime value and customer acquisition costs. But most importantly, the one I find over and over again is you don't have the inventory that you need to physically turn over that amount of money. And it's not about going and buying a whole bunch more stock. That is just going to cause you to grow broke. And growing broke is where you are doing a fantastic turnover, but you have no money. It happens over and over again. So there are lots of things that you need to know, but also to put in place to make sure you don't grow broke, but you do hit that $1 million goal. And one of the things you have to do is to stop thinking small. Stop thinking in terms of this week or today and start thinking about what is the goal for your business? Why is it even here? Why do you and your team turn up every single day? And why do your customers shop with you? When you think about those things, it drives every business decision that you make. And the goal doesn't become about $1 million. It might be how many customers you want to serve or the kind of experience that you want to have, or maybe it's a profit margin. It could be that you give back to charity. There are so many other things that are more important and that will actually drive better results than pulling a number out of the air that may or may not have any relevance to what you want to achieve and what you want from your business. I actually talked about this in last week's episode. Is this sabotaging your success? Which was measuring the wrong things in your business. If you know where you want to go, it is so much easier to work out how you're going to get there. But if you just turn up every day and do what you're already doing with no idea of what you want to achieve, who you want to be, who you want your business to be, then very quickly it just becomes work. It becomes mundane. It becomes a job. And if you're not getting paid really, really well, then you might be better off just shutting up shop and going and getting a job. If you continue to think small, you will continue to play small. And is that really why you started your business? To play small? Now, not every risk you're going to take is going to pay off. So perhaps one of the first things you can do is stop looking at it as risk and start thinking about it as innovation. Because if you aren't constantly innovating, you're going to be left behind and your store will never scale. And before I finish up this episode, I just want to leave you with one last thought. If your business is not around to serve your customers, then who the heck is? And if you need some help putting all these parts together to build a machine that serves your customers, that fills your soul and your bank account, make sure you check out Scale Your Store, which is the only retail growth program that covers all 5 pillars of retail success. You can find it over at scaleyourstore.com. If this episode has got you thinking, I would love you to hit me up on social media and tell me, what is your big, crazy dream for your business? And in return, I will message you back and tell you mine. It is super big and it is 1000% crazy. Thanks so much for joining me on today's episode. Make sure you check out scaleyourstore.com. Hit me up in my DMs on social, and I will see you back here again next week. Until then, stay profitable. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. You can find all of the show notes over at selinaknight.com. If you found something that you heard today particularly useful, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on iTunes or Stitcher. And of course, feel free to share this episode with someone that you think could benefit by listening to it. Want more retail biz strategies? You can watch the Bringing Business to Retail TV show, where each week I'll answer a question or provide you with a simple, actionable retail biz strategy that you can implement in your business right away. If you have a question or a guest, I'd love to hear from you. Drop my team an email at podcast@selinaknight.com, and I'll see you on the next episode. Have a great week.